All right, good morning. Welcome to our February learning series. You might have noticed that the pop-up, we are recording this session, so we do record our sessions and make them available afterwards. We encourage you to, all attendees are muted by default, so we encourage you to go ahead and ask questions through the chat or Q&A panel, depending on which one is active to you. We have a great team of specialists in the background assisting here this morning, so we should be able to answer your questions as we go. If not, we will address them at the end of the presentation. Our topic today is around Rockwell Automation's design software update, or an update on their design software. And mainly we're going to focus on Studio 5000, the new version 36 release, and the new FactoryTalk Logix Echo version 3 release. So if there are some other questions around some other design software titles, feel free to put them in the chat, or as always, reach out to your automation specialist, local specialist. We're always happy to help answer those questions. So just a quick few introduction slides here, if I can get my mouse in the right spot. There we go. So coming up next, we like to highlight our, what's coming up next. So of course, in January, we did an automation update that is actually recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. You're more welcome to go back and watch that if you missed it. Of course, today is our update on Studio 5000 and Logix Echo. Coming up in March, we're going to look at industrial networks and update with that. There's some new switches, some life cycle changes happening in the Stratix portfolio. So we invite you to come to that update to learn what's new with the industrial networking portfolio. April, it will be around modernization, just always a recurring theme with your legacy equipment and what's the best path to modernize it. And the last one we have identified up to this point is in May, and that'll be around the Edge Analytics, a little update on some Edge Analytics products from Rockwell. We always, we post all these things on our reynoldsonline.com under training and events section. So keep up with with all the events happening at our website. And so that's it for introductions as far as what's coming up next. So I'm going to introduce our speaker, Mr. Craig Griswold, technology consultant with Rockwell Automation out of Florida. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my screen and let Craig take it from here.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks. Everyone hear me, right? We're good?
Yeah,
and my screen is up.
Okay. And yep, we are all good.
Okay. So yeah, Craig Griswold, Rockwell Automation, software and control technical consultant. I've been with Rockwell for 19 years now, most of which I was in the field as a field service engineer, as well as the network services, and have been in this technical consultant position for about 3.5 years now. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about Studio 5000 Logix Designer, the version 36 release, a little bit about the SDK, and then Logix Echo, kind of an overview, as well as what's new in version 3 of Echo, and then finally go show you a little demo of the Echo config and how I'm using it on my machine itself and kind of what the dashboard looks like. So just as kind of an overview, over the past few years, version 34 in March of 2022, big thing was SIP security for the compact guard Logix, improved download times for the control and compact Logix via FactoryTalk links. Last year, or a year and a half ago-ish, version 35 released our new redundant I/O, the Flex HA 5000 platform, as well as GuardLink, some, excuse me, and access test mode, some additional instructions, and then finally version 36, which was went out for release the end of mid-November and November last year. Our 5032 I/O link, which is our new armor block release, a new additional controller in the safety guard Logix platform, support for the iTrack 5750 and not going to dive deep into the hardware support, but I am going to talk about these capabilities, especially the OPC UA and the granular safety signatures, as well as some of the selections for the multi-device interaction that you can do in Studio 5000. So we released a new Guard Logix controller, and the big difference is it's got an increase of 20 megabytes of standard memory for Guard Logix and 3 megabytes of safety. The previous version, the L84 ES, offers 20 megabytes and 6 megabytes of safety. So customers that need additional space, a little less space for safety, but additional space for standard, that's where the L85 ES will come into play. So one of the biggest features that came out was the ability to have OPC UA built into the controller itself. So no need for, if you want to use OPC UA, you don't need a piece of software anymore. We can share data directly from the controller. It's available in Control Logix, Compact Logix, both safety and standard safety and process. The controller can be an OPC UA server or an OPC UA client. It currently can't be both. So something to keep in mind. It is already embedded in or incorporated into our policy manager to create certificate generations for secure communications to other pieces of hardware and or software. One thing to keep in mind when you're going to use OPC UA in the controller, different controllers have different amount of tags or nodes they can expose. So for instance, a 1756 L82 offers 600 nodes or tags, where an L85E can offer 15,000. So as you increase the memory size, you'll be able to expose more tags via OPC UA. And I'll be sharing a couple tech notes that'll go into exactly how many tags per controller, what controllers support OPC UA. So how do I configure it? Kind of a rough overview. There's new instructions for an OPC UA server where clients can consume it. These two messages, a message instruction to consume data from an OPC UA server. And then finally, over on the right here, you'll see how I can configure read-write access to what I'm going to share via OPC UA, read-write, read-only, or not share it at all via OPC UA. The other new release, new feature associated with it is granular safety signatures. This has been in development for several years. I worked with commercial engineering way back when on some ideas from one of our customers. So in traditional safety controllers in the past, there was one safety signature at the controller level. So any changes made to anything in the safety that you see below here, the safety tasks, safety programs, safety routines, that required a whole new controller safety signature. Customer had to create a new report, and in many cases had to go back and revalidate any changes that were made in the safety environment. So now we have multiple safety signatures at lower levels where if something changes in the safety program or the safety routine, only that has to be a new safety signature recreated and validated. So instead of having to revalidate the whole safety controller, now it makes the task much more or less daunting, where I only have to validate, revalidate, and run a report on a single area of the program. So the safety signature can still be found in the controller properties by clicking up here, but the new safety signatures in the different locations for routines, tags, you can select wherever you happen to be at, in this case, this safety task, and you'll see the safety signature, the timestamp. If it's not there, obviously it won't show it, so you'll know right away. So as you dig down deeper into the tags, routines, you can find the safety signature for that particular portion in the preview pane. So the safety signature report is still very similar. You're going to generate the safety signature report. However, it's going to look quite different because it's going to give you all the different safety signatures in a single report. So the controller itself, the application, the tags, safety routine, safety tags, and you'll see a few different colors in here. Blue is anything which has had a change that needs to be a new safety signature or revalidated. Black is no change. And then it's not shown here, but there'll be a gray color where if the report did not see the safety signature, or if it's an unknown, to go back and revalidate that. So similar overall process. The report's a little different, but much more granular. Especially if you have a larger safety system with multiple safety controllers, it'll make the development much quicker and easier. Another new feature, access test mode. So we released an access test mode for motion in version 35. So now we've added an access test mode for safety as well for these devices. So I can validate my safety motion without having to have the physical hardware there, using this access test mode. So available for Logix Echo version 3, 5580 and 5380 controllers. Some of the usability, and this one's really nice. So for forever, you could not select multiple devices in the I/O tree and do anything with them. You can now use the shift or control key. In this case, I use the control key to select a couple different devices. And now I can cut, copy, and paste. I can paste multiple times. I can delete, and I can also export all these modules. So a lot more flexibility when you're copy and pasting devices in the I/O tree or moving them around. Some of the other workstation, and I'm not going to use the word harmonization, but and a quicker way to export documentation, device descriptions for EDS files, for I/O link device descriptions, and HART device descriptions. So if I develop this on a single workstation, I can export all these in an export file. It's still a manual process. Give the export to coworkers, my other engineers working on the project, and they'll import them. And now everybody's on the same page with the same EDS files, same description files for these devices. This is more of a reminder for the Logix SDK. There has been an SDK for a while that you can automate functions in Studio 5000 to improve testing and deployment. We started out with C++. With the new release, we do have C#. So I can automate procedures in Studio 5000, such as download, change the path, both for physical controllers as well as Logix Echo access. So a couple examples in case we haven't seen it. I can use a single workstation in the SDK to download to multiple controllers. What the SDK can be used for is to change the communication path, to download to controller 1, controller 2, so forth and so on. Download the project to the target controller, and then once I'm done, change it back to run mode. In the case of automated testing for continuous integration or continuous improvement and development, like a Jenkins pipeline that they're showing here, the SDK kit can bring in different version controls, download and test in Echo first, gather up results, create a report, and then also once the report's validated, it can be used to automatically download to the physical controller. And then finally, another example of using the SDK to actually create an SD card and be able to download to different controllers by taking that SD card and setting the controller up to move the project and load it on PowerUp. So just a couple examples. I think it's available in the professional version by default. I'd have to double check that. So the C# was released. It's available now in the latest release version 1.01. There will be a version 2 coming out sometime this year, I believe, with some enhanced instructions and development tools in the SDK. So I don't know if we got any questions in. If not, I'm gonna move on to the Logix Echo portion. All right, so FactoryTalk Logix Echo, just kind of level set what Echo is. It is our emulate tool for Logix-based controllers. So with the latest release of Compact Logix as well, so Control Logix, Compact Logix, safety standards, and process controllers. It works very similar to the way a physical controller currently works. You're going to develop in Studio 5000. The Echo will have the same firmware version, so you can download these firmware versions from our PCDC site, or Product Compatibility and Download Center. Create the controller in the tree here, download to it, and it works as a fully functional controller. With some limitations of not being able to control I/O. Obviously, it is not a soft controller. I can create multiple chassis in here, which can hold 17 controllers. So the release with having multiple chassis, one of the bigger uses is most customers put their controller in slot 0. So if I use slot 0 up, then I got to move my controller around. So I can create multiple chassis, and I'll show you this here in a few slides and in the demo, to not only add capacity for additional controllers, but also to open up slot 0, which a lot of people use. So the Ethernet port is emulated. I can also do produce consume between those emulated controllers, so that'd be a class 1 connection. As I said, there is no connections, class 1 connections to physical I/O. This is to emulate the code only. If you want to do some simulation or process modeling, the SDK kit will allow you to interface with simulators like Emulate 3D, ANSYS, MATLAB, and things like that. This is a subscription-based piece of software, so keep that in mind. And it's not included with toolkits or versions of Studio 5000. It is a standalone piece of software, but it can emulate any Logix-based controller. So as I kind of stated earlier, you use the same project file. So customers that used L7 processors and the Logix Emulate 5000 know full well that if I started developing my code, started building an I/O tree, and I went to go test it, I had to change controller to the Emulate controller, and then I lost my entire I/O tree. With Echo, that's not the case anymore. You develop your code. You do not have to change anything in the controller. The I/O tree will be maintained. So I can download and test as is. I can have Logix installed on the same machine. It can be hosted on a server and shared to multiple users. Test them and then download that code to my controller. So I touched on this a little bit earlier. When you're configuring Echo to emulate your code, you're going to have the emulator firmware kit that's going to get installed just as you installed a piece of software for Echo. You're going to create in the dashboard, you're going to create your controller, assign an IP address, assign the firmware version, and then finally you're going to use Studio 5000. And what you'll see with Echo is this emulate Ethernet driver that will connect to the different controllers that are in Echo. Again, up to 17. I talked about this as well, just to reiterate. I can have, as you can see, I have multiple controllers in slot 0 here. I can create multiple chassis. So you'll see area A, area B, area C chassis. So if I have multiple controllers in slot 0, I can just simply create multiple chassis There currently are any limits on the number of chassis other than resources on a PC. I can, from the dashboard, I can, turn the controller on and off, set the IP address. There's also an API, a service API that I can do all the same manual activities in the dashboard. I can automate that with the service API, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. So Echo can be hosted everything on a single workstation or distributed environment. For instance, I could have Studio 5000 on my engineering workstation. I can have Echo hosted on a server somewhere that multiple engineers can access and use these different chassis and slots. And then finally, I can test my, in this instance, FactoryTalk HMI, SE HMI distributed environment by pointing my current shortcut for my controller using that emulate driver to Echo to begin testing my HMI functionality. So flexible in how you want to design, deploy, and test for Echo. Also have support for SD cards. So if you are using that SD card in a controller, there's a virtual SD card that's the data stored in the Windows directory. It's stored in a default location, which you can change. So same thing, backup and restore projects, read, write projects, log data. I can't store one thing to be aware of. I can't store firmware, and the data is unencrypted, as you can encrypt it on the controller SD card. So similar functionality in a control. This is for ControlLogix, being able to browse across the backplane. So if I'm in Studio 5000, I have multiple controllers in my 17-slot chassis for Echo. I don't have to assign an IP address to every single one if I don't want to. I can assign one IP address, go through the backplane, and then get online with it, or create my shortcut the very same way if I'm testing an HMI. Some of the software requirements for it, you can see here, as you increase memory, you're going to have to increase memory on the PC itself, which is difficult, or if you're using virtualization, which many people are now, increase the memory for that image that's running Echo. It will consume memory, especially if you fill that chassis up with multiple controllers. Okay, so what's new in version 3 that was released end of last year? The big highlight is here supporting compact Logix controllers. That was a big ask for customers. So we can now support compact Logix, compact guard Logix, as well as the compact Logix process controller. Originally in version 1, we could only support standard Logix. Version 2 supported the guard Logix, and then so finally, as I said, version 3 now supports the complete Logix, Logix-based platform. Additional features, kind of mentioned earlier as well, the SIP motion access simulation, allowing users to test SIP safety motion without the hardware present. A few more, the ability to save the diagnostics, and the check-in, check-out relates to activations, releasing activations. If you have multiple instances running, if you shut the controller off, it'll free up activations, whereas it would, in the previous versions, it did not. Thing to take away from this slide, I talked about supporting the controllers, the different tasks, the safety task as well. For compact Logix controllers, you will need to use version 36 or later of software and firmware. ControlLogix started support for version 33, so 33, 34, 35, and then now with version 36, we can support all the Logix controllers. So a little more on the access test mode for safety. Again, it allows SIP safety motion to test different SIP motion things such as safety feedback, the attributes, the pass-through, your safety add-ons instructions. So now I can do some lower fidelity testing, and it's not pure simulation, but I can start testing those SIP axes using the test mode without the hardware to do some initial configuration and testing. So just like Studio 5000, Logix Echo does have an API as well. The help file, it gets installed with the help file. The help file gets installed with the software. It is optional, so when you're installing, there's a little pull-down menu that you need to include it. So the SDK kit has plenty of explanations of the functions as well as sample code you can borrow. There is a NuGet package that includes some .NET assemblies as well. So some connectivities that you would use the API for. If a customer has their own custom application, you can use the C#, C++, to be able to connect to an application, allow Echo or the custom application to communicate to each other using the API. Interfacing with the Studio 5000 simulation interface, which allows a controller to connect and exchange data with the functional mockup interface, ANSYS, as well as MATLAB and Simulink applications for physics-based application testing. And then finally, connectivity to Emulate 3D, which is Rockwell's co-simulation package that can do I/O simulation, data exchange, and test, for instance, conveyor applications, large warehousing applications. We have a fluid and pipe release. I don't know if that's a proper name, that was recently released as well. So Echo can be used to test and simulate, without your controller via software in those different scenarios. So there is two different APIs. One is called the Service API. So that's going to do manual actions that I would do in the Echo dashboard. So if I taking it out of run mode, creating, deleting, changing the mode of the controller, and then the controller IP is just what you would think. So now I'm going to read and write tags, change my mode of operation. I can change my timing, time sync, adjust testing scenarios with the controller API. So two different functionalities, both are included with that API. So this is a link to more about Echo and our digital engineering platform. So this is my machine. I just wanted to show you some different scenarios that I use it for day in and day out. So I have my different multiple chassis here, chassis 0, for instance, 1, 2, and you see I'm reusing, as I said, that slot 0 and a couple different chassis. So when I go to configure it, any chassis, you're going to right click and add your controller, or you can add it from an ACD file, which is what I did here. And then it's going to give you the type of emulation you're using, the firmware control, IP address, where the ACD locations is, where the ACD file is located, if I want to use the SD card. And then over on the right, by using this it's called the device status, but the plug looking icon, I can also look at what mode I'm in, change the mode, turn the controller on and off. So my Studio 5000, this is my Plant PAX demo. You can see I'm online. My communication path is to that Logix Emulate, but my code is fully intact. I can open up any of the subroutines they're executing, but more importantly, you can see my I/O tree is intact. Some of it's inhibited by my choice. You'll see these are enabled, but they'll be timing in and out. But the important thing to know is and see is now I can download with my I/O tree intact and start doing my testing, not having to modify code. I can use this as a standard controller and edit code, look at properties, commit changes, just as you would with a regular physical Logix controller. So I'm also using this to simulate my HMI application. So my shortcut in FactoryTalk View Studio SE, I pointed at the emulate controller, and now I can start testing my HMI, my faceplates to validate communications, alarming, do your basic testing prior to either deployment or getting that physical controller. So I also, for the new support for Compact Logix, you'll see that I have a chassis 3, nothing's under it. The Compact Logix are going to kind of float because they are not associated with a chassis. So you would add a controller this way, not to a particular chassis, but otherwise pretty much the same thing. So this is my Compact Guard Logix emulator. I'm obviously using version 36, and everything else is pretty much the same. My IP address, my controller, turning it on and off. Again, I'm going to be online with this Compact Logix. So I'm emulating it right now. Compact Guard Safety Logix. And again, my IO tree is intact. So I don't have to make any modifications to my code. And I'm actually testing this one using a PanelView 5000. So I showed, my project ran out of time. That's what happened. So I can emulate a project for Studio 5000 as well. That went a lot quicker. And then when this comes up, I want to go through some tech notes as well. So I am online with this Compact Guard Logix that's hosted in Echo. This is just kind of showing controller performance as it goes along, because I don't have any physical I/O to show you right now. Some other things to keep in mind for especially the new OPC UA functionality that's built into the Logix controllers, especially the nodes that are capable of doing this. So this is a tech note that we'll share with you, how many tags can be associated. So you'll see in all this, the lower end controller does not support any OPC UA nodes. And as you increase in memory, you'll see the ability to have additional OPC nodes. So how do I calculate how many nodes I'm actually using? So there's an example in here in this tech note for DINS, a UDT that has these other tags underneath that array. So you basically do the math. So this UDT, you're going to add up, and that's going to be a total of 109 tags. So I have my 100, and then the rest of the instructions under here. So if you have an array, and you want to share that via OPC UA, each one of those members of that array are going to count as a node or a tag. There's some other ones in here that's more general guideline of which ones support OPC UA. Obviously, the 5370 is not going to support it. We have some examples that show that you can download and show you how to configure OPC UA via code. So it'll guide you through that, how to configure the message instructions. The actual documentation is lagging a little bit behind. So I'll make sure that these tech notes get posted with the presentations. There's a bunch of hidden slides in these presentations that you can also review that I didn't include based on time. So unless we can move on to any Q&A or any questions
Sure.
that anybody has.
Yeah, Craig, there was two in the Q&A, at least that I saw. Maybe one was around the IP, concerning Echo, and then basically kind of some of the IP addressing, like if you're going to connect your physical world into your virtual world. There were some questions around, does each PLC need a unique IP address on the physical network, or is the emulated network accessible through the computer hosting the Echo software? Took a stab at that one, but you might want to address that in a little more detail on the IP address, some of the best practices around that, perhaps.
So different customers choose different ways to do it. So in my test environment, my VMware is using NAT. So you'd have to enter the IP address of you'd have to know it and share it with your coworkers to access it remotely if you're using NAT. Actually, I guess I can try this. Otherwise, you can also configure your VM host to actually share an IP address or give it its own IP address. That way you'd be able to browse it on the network. As far as multiple IP addresses, like I said in Echo, you can browse across the backplane. So if I need to, if I don't want to assign a bunch of IP addresses and worry about maintaining them, I can assign one to whatever slot, the slot 0 in this case, and then I can bridge through the backplane. So it kind of depends how your network's set up. I've had customers that put in the IP address manually. I also have customers that use just assign the VM its own IP address that's on the same network as your PCs and the rest of your engineering team's development. Hopefully I answered that question.
Yeah, type back in if that didn't quite answer. There was another one too around just the licensing for Echo as far as it being run on a server, if that was included in the same subscription or was it in a separate? Yeah.
It is not a separate. It's not a separate activation or not a separate subscription to run it on a server. You can install it on any machine you want. You can share. That way, multiple people. Once you get your IP address scheme decided, multiple engineers with multiple instances of Studio 5000 can utilize all these 17 slots, the additional chassis, and things like that. So. There's no Echo server. You can host it on a server. You can host it on a workstation. It's kind of your choice. If there aren't any questions from the group or anything else somebody wants to take a deeper dive into, we can end it. Or
yep, we'll give a last call for questions as we give a moment there to let people feverishly type in. I want to thank everybody. You got the clock is ticking. You appreciate everybody joining us. Sounded like you might have had a little bit of an issue with some people accessing the link, so apologize if that was you and you came in late. I'm not quite sure what the issue there was, but we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. We appreciate Craig, you taking the time to present for us. Again, this has been recorded, and we'll share it after. Oh, we got one more question coming in. So someone beat the clock there. If you see that one, Craig, it says, does Echo support multiple engineers connecting to PLCs at the same time, either different PLCs or multiple engineers on the same PLC? Oh, basically, I think the question right there is can multiple people connect to the same virtual CPU at the same time? Probably.
Yeah, it's going to be similar to what you do in a physical controller. I think that number's 5. I can't remember the exact number, but multiple people can go online with the same controller. I can't remember what the exact quantity is. That might be FactoryTalk View I'm thinking of. So yes, multiple people can access the same controller at the same time.
All right. There was a question about the session tomorrow, and tomorrow's Houston session is basically the same, I think, just minus Craig, right? So it'll be our own specialist team there in Houston presenting. Guess we can go ahead and probably close it out. Once again, thanks for joining. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone too. We forgot to mention that at the top. We had a special Valentine's Day session today. And as always, we appreciate you joining, and reach out to your local specialist if there's anything you still want to get to answer. We're here to help anytime. So Craig, once again, thank you. Wish everybody have a great day.